Blog post 21. Bodybuilding and mental health. Is bodybuilding and fitness becoming ever more frequently used to cover up mental health disorders, compulsive behavioural issues and eating disorders? Hi, I'm Paul Baxendale and welcome to my latest blog post, number 21 in my bodybuilding series. For those of you who are interested, I've also begun a separate series on life issues which covers non-bodybuilding related themes but which still affect us all. Today I'd like to share my thoughts on something that I've noticed over the last several years, especially as I returned to the sport after a period where, although I always trained, I had to remove myself from the social and competitive aspects of the sport for my own mental health, as I had to reinvent myself, so to speak, after a life-changing accident. The issues I've been seeing with ever more frequency and to deeper and deeper levels have coincided with the rise of the internet, but also the changing structure of our sport, as it has branched into not simply having men's and women's bodybuilding classes at shows, but which now includes bikini, figure, men's physique, classic physique, and now even a wellness class. And I don't believe the changes in the structure of our sport and the rise of the internet don't figure in the increasing number of problems I'm witnessing right down at gym level with serious mental health disorders. I'm raising this now, not because it's the only time that bodybuilding has attracted people who have mental health issues, who have then used the sports lifestyle to deflect away from what otherwise would be obvious serious problems, as there have always been a small number of people attracted to the sport due to either feelings of insecurity or inadequacy, ever since the 1950s Charles Atlas adverts of the skinny kid on the beach getting sand kicked in his face by the beach bully, only to order a Charles Atlas course and transform himself into a hulking figure of a man who would never be messed with. And to some extent, bodybuilding has actually helped many hundreds of thousands of people with insecurity issues in a very positive way. What I'm talking about today is men and women, teenage boys and teenage girls, who have serious mental health disorders, who then either take up bodybuilding in an attempt to help themselves but find that it makes their issues much greater, or those who come into the sport fairly well balanced but who then take the sport to such an extreme that they then develop serious mental health issues. One of the immediate questions that must be addressed is that this sport at the highest levels demands extreme levels of obsessiveness and an attention to detail that anyone would call them mentally unhealthy. However, the difference you'll find is that anyone who is a world level athlete in any sport or a world level expert in any discipline will also demonstrate all the same indicators. So does that mean that all top athletes are mentally unwell? No, is the answer to that. Since the difference between the top athletes who choose to live their lives a certain way for a finite number of years before retiring have made a conscious decision to do so. Yes, their families will complain that they've exhibited the same levels of obsessiveness as those who genuinely have a serious mental health problem, but the person themselves is or should be fully aware of the sacrifices they are making to become the best in the world The problems lie in those levels below that very top elite level. Those who give their very lives in order to pursue a dream that they will never accomplish. Now, you may argue that that's a very negative way of looking at life and at sport. And who is to say what anyone is capable of accomplishing if they just work hard enough? Well, this is where bodybuilding, as well as every other sport, can help distinguish between the two. You see, to become a world-class bodybuilder, and I mean one that makes a living from the sport officially, not by selling drugs or other less honourable ways of making money, well known in the industry, then you must be born with the genetics of what can only be described as a freak, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. To make it in bodybuilding, you have to be born with the genetics that allow you to build muscle faster than the average human can ever possibly do, get leaner than the average human can ever possibly do, and have specific muscle insertions and a body frame that is not even 1,000,000 to 1, it's close to 1,000,000,000 to 1. Now, I'm going to give you my own personal example of how I came to know and understand that although I grew quicker and easier than anyone I knew in my town, that I was still missing that X factor, genetics, that is needed to become a Mr. or Miss Olympia. I was a national level bodybuilder in an age when even qualifying for a national show meant that you were outstanding. If compared with today, you were almost pro standard, if not definitely pro standard. The British finals was almost like a pro show with the quality of physiques on display each year. And I can reel off a list of names that were incredible amateur bodybuilders, but who never got their pro card, because back then only one pro card was issued per year for the men and only one pro card a year for the women. I think that's partly why people look back to the 1990s as a golden era for the sport, because the national lineups in the UK and in the US and across the rest of the world were so deep in quality that whoever did win their pro card was guaranteed to be capable of standing on a pro stage from day one. Can you imagine that? Only one pro card issued per year, with probably 4 or 5 physiques worthy of being pro status in any given year in each country. Well, you probably can't, because today there is a ludicrous number of pro cards given out each year. In 2020, the NPC alone gave out over 800 pro cards to athletes. Now, when each athlete has to pay an annual membership fee to maintain their pro status, then yes, I can see why the Federation gives out so many pro cards to 800 athletes. But how many of those 800 are going to be able to win prize money at a pro show? How many of those athletes will be able to make enough prize money to allow them to become professional bodybuilders? And by professional, I'm going by the definition of you're actually making your living from the sport, not from personal training, nor from selling drugs. I was obsessed in getting my pro card in the 90s. I lived, breathed, slept and ate bodybuilding 24 hours a day. I worked a 9-to-5 job until I opened my very first gym. But then I also worked 3 nights a week on the door in order to support my bodybuilding back then. But I was improving and making a small name for myself. I even competed at European level and then at world level. And yet I made the decision to quit chasing my pro card and to continue competing just for the enjoyment of it, and to be able to travel the world competing and having fun. And I was fortunate to have a sponsor at the time, not an ambassador for a company that gave me a couple of tubs of protein each month, a real sponsor. But I had a couple of wake-up calls and then a conversation with a very well-respected mentor that made all the difference to me. Firstly, being in Temple Gym and training with Dorian meant that I was very much aware of what a Mr. Olympia looked like, and it wasn't me. Now, yes, I was up and coming, but in the off season, we both would weigh roughly the same amount, somewhere between 300 and 315 pounds. However, the 315 pounds on Dorian looked very different on him than the same 350 pounds on me. It made me look like a stick. Well, maybe that's exaggerating it a little, but there was something very different in our genetic makeup, in the look of the muscles, the size and density of the muscles, that spoke volumes. Then, being in Temple, I was exposed to having most of the top pros coming in every now and then, and that same difference was there. Just with Dorian, it was even more obvious. I remember poor Dillette coming in one day, and he ate nothing for hours while he just sat there and watched us train and then chat afterwards. All I saw him consume that day was a Weider Mega Mass 3000 shake, probably one of the crappiest products on the market, full of sugar and a little protein. And I remember thinking, how on earth does he look the way he does when he's not eating every 2 to 3 hours like I was? And certainly I would never have drunk a Weider Mega Mass 3000 shake. One day after training, I was sat with Dorian, and it was towards the end of the time that we trained together. I think Dorian had seen the sacrifices I was making, driving to Birmingham 3 times a week from Swindon, living and breathing bodybuilding, and he wanted to help me, and he did. He asked me if I thought I could turn pro. I said yes, I think I can win my pro card. He agreed with me. Yes, he thought I could too. But then he asked me if I thought I could make the top 3 in a pro show. And at that question I had to hesitate, as I'd never really thought about that before. And the answer I knew deep down was no. I may have made the top 10, I may have made up the numbers on the stage, but was I good enough to place in the top 3 in a pro show? No. I knew that pros were made out of a different genetic material than I was. He then quickly said that he would never tell me or advise me what to do with my life, but that maybe I shouldn't put all my eggs into one basket, especially when I had other gifts and qualities that could allow me to make my way in the world away from bodybuilding. It was never a question of the training. Training was something that I just loved, and I knew I would always do. I loved it. The feel of the iron in my hands was something that gave me so much pleasure. But it wasn't about the iron, it was what I was willing to sacrifice. Was I willing to sacrifice a family, a relationship, financially, socially, for a pro card? Now, I decided I loved training and the gym so much that I would start my own gym and keep training and keep competing each year, but not for a pro card. I decided to compete for a federation that allowed you to compete abroad if you were good enough, and they would finance your plane tickets, your hotel, your food even. So that's what I did until 1996, when my first child was born, and then in 1997 I hung up my trunks only to put them back on again to see what sort of shape I could get into at nearly 40 years of age. And funnily enough, it was in that second period of competing that I did win the overall British. I came top 3 at the Europeans and top 5 at the Worlds, and I was still running gyms, but it wasn't with the IFBB, and I had no desire to try and go down that route again. I knew I was never good enough to be a top pro, and I thank Dorian for helping me come to that decision all those years ago. Now, how much hurt, loss and heartache he saved me from, I'll never know. But I think it was probably quite a lot. Now, bodybuilding and mental health issues is not a recent combination that can work both for the positive and for the negatives of our health. Muscle dysmorphia has been around for just as long as we have lifted weights in order to build muscle, I suspect. But on my return to bodybuilding, to the industry in 2017, the point at which I began talking with competitors, attending shows again, and began to post stories of bodybuilding history on social media, I began to notice immediately that there had been a large shift in the types of people that competed, the types of people that were being attracted to the lifestyle of the sport, and a very large population of people who had achieved notoriety and fame in the social media world that had no corresponding competitive profile or even a desire to compete. Now, I'm not here to discuss the merits of people with great physiques who don't compete becoming famous. In fact, good luck to them. And as long as they are promoting the sport in a healthy and a positive way, then it's all good. However, as good as many of these people's intentions may be, the resulting consequences of what they are advocating or selling appears to be having some serious knock-on effects which are damaging to some of their followers. Infested completely with extremely nuanced messages, which is having a tremendously dangerous impact on many young people, and some that are not so young. I think that some examples may be helpful here to illustrate what I've been talking about. Now, obviously, I'm not going to ever mention anybody's name. I would never do such a thing, whether they're well known or whether they're just from a local gym or whatever. It doesn't matter. Names are irrelevant. It's the examples that is important, and the examples of what I believe are dangerous trends in our industry that may be leading to men and women further into what may be already existing mental health disorders, or actually form a part in their creation, whereby at some point someone, hopefully a professional mental health advisor, can support them as they recover from whichever of these situations may have developed. The most obvious one, and one that we see every single day, is the consistent message in all forms of media to have the perfect physique, whether or not that perfect physique has been sold to you in the form of photoshopped images, people with their own mental health disorders, enhanced filters, lighting, or other photographic tricks of the trade that sell you an illusion of what the viewer believes is the norm in the industry. Add to that the drug issue. Then what we have is an array of often self-proclaimed naturals who in reality have been and probably still are using physique enhancing drugs, whether they be anabolic steroids, growth hormone, thyroid medications, fat loss pharmaceuticals like clenbuterol, to actual surgically enhanced bodies with either site injections to enhance everything from arms to delts to glutes and even abdominal etching, none of which are ever mentioned by the creator in their posts or their profiles. Now, if you've seen some of my other videos, then you'll know that I have some golden rules by which I try to live by my life by. Every morning, reminding myself to live as honestly, as honourably, as noble, as courageous a life as possible, in the path towards becoming a more virtuous man of integrity and truth. If you put any one of those thousands of these ambassadors, creators, personal trainers, coaches or brand figureheads by just the one rule of honesty, how many do you think would pass the test this morning? Well, I'll leave you to be the answer of that question. So, bombarded with images of supposedly perfect physiques and lives, what impact do you think it will have on the average gym goer who has less than 2 years of training beneath their belts and yet look nothing like the people that they aspire to? It's creating an impossible goal. Well, impossible unless they too wish to devote their lives to Spartan dietary intake, pharmaceutical and possibly surgical enhancement, and even then they're still likely to fall short of what they see on those posts every single day. One of the most common issues I see day in and day out is the switching of eating disorders to that of, oh, I'm a fitness athlete, that's why I eat this way. Just look at the number of women who claim that the fitness lifestyles saved them from their eating disorder. No, they aren't healed from it. They've replaced one form of distorting eating strategy for another. They can now walk around each day with their air-dried chicken and broccoli and explain that they are eating that way because they are a fitness competitor or an athlete. Yet how many of these same so-called athletes will ever get on stage, for one thing? And even if they do, how many of them have what a bodybuilder would call a real off-season, during which they can reset their metabolic rates, their thyroid function, their reproductive cycles, etc.? Any coach to a world level female athlete will tell you that once the athlete gets into a body fat level that is too low for the human body to feel as though it can reproduce safely, then it stops that very same reproductive cycle. In other words, when you push your female bodies to the extremes, then the same body with a millennia of evolutionary biology's knowledge knows that if the female should conceive in that state, she and or the infant is not likely to survive. Therefore, it shuts down her periods. Now, that's common knowledge in sports biology and isn't a big problem as long as the athlete has a finite limit to their career or periods during the year where they could come back to a healthy level and their cycles can again return to allow reproduction. But what if the athlete remains at that low level all year for multiple years? Then what? Well, there's very little science to know exactly what will happen, but my guess would be that it's not going to be in the interest of your long-term health. And this same phenomenon isn't limited to just female athletes. How many male bodybuilders, fitness and gym goers take their need to maintain their ultra sharp six-pack abs year round and eat a minimal nutritional intake to ensure they don't lose their precious abs? Well, one thing is for sure, their natural testosterone levels will plummet unless they are also supplementing with exogenous testosterone. Is it just my impression, or are we seeing more and more young men taking gear? And at younger and younger ages, in their quest to build the physique that they see on social media and in movies and in the magazines? Of course they are. The level of drug taking in young gym goers has rocketed, just as the amount of gear in competitive bodybuilders has also rocketed today. I'll give you a crazy example. I know a bodybuilder who competed for the first time last year. He used more anabolics and growth hormone and insulin for his first timers show than I took for my 5th place at the World Championships, where I took no growth hormone and no insulin. So these young guys are all juiced up. What is happening to their still developing brains? Their levels of aggression, which are peaking now anyway, and then they use testosterone, which shuts down their own testosterone production, leaving many of them with zero libido when they come off, if they ever do come off. So not only do we have women athletes unable to conceive, but we also have male athletes who have zero sperm counts. Wow. Now that doesn't make the future of our genetic DNA pool look very promising, does it? So without scratching the surface of mental health already, we've identified 2 key areas of huge concern with the practices used today in a trap, caught in a trap of perceived body imagery. But let's now go a little below the surface and see some real danger signals which need to be highlighted if I'm going to hold myself to my value of honesty today. Of all the women I've known who have competed, at one point in their lives, every single one of them had an unhealthy relationship with food. Now that covers everything from eating for emotional need to full-on anorexia, to binge eating followed by self-vomiting, to a terrifying fear of getting what they see as fat, and all of them found in bodybuilding or fitness an industry where their unhealthy relationship was allowed to continue without question, without anyone saying, hey, I really care for you and I'm really worried about your eating and what impact it's going to have on your health. No, people just see it as someone else with a strict dietary regime. I mean, seriously, do you think some of these people were prepping for the Olympia the way they live, and yet their physiques don't even look as though they could enter the local swimming club's 25 yards breaststroke competition? The eating order tsunami does seem to affect women more than men, and I think society, cultural standards set by magazine covers, movies, models and fitness ambassadors are all responsible for that. Even those who aren't prepping for shows are eating air-dried astronaut food with little vegetables to go with it. Now it's hard enough today to get your needed vitamins and minerals without eating like you're prepping. Vitamin and mineral tablets are not the same as getting them digested from vegetables. And even if you did eat all your vegetables from organic sources, the very land the crops are grown in today have been washed away of so many nutrients from over farming that leaves these same vegetables with much less nutrition than they would have had even 100 years ago. Well, how do you tell if someone has a problem with their relationship with food? Simple. Watch them train. If they are training like women or men possessed with fire and blood and guts and a passion that literally scares you, then you know they're pretty damn serious about their chosen sport. But if they're just going through the movements with no effort or no passion, if sweat isn't running down their faces and they're posing for a camera on a tripod, then you know you've come across someone with some mental health issues. Now this leads me nicely onto another mental health issue that is plaguing our industry right now, that of self-image, self-esteem, and the need for significance and confirmation that is at the unhealthy and obsessive level. It's not hard to spot. You'll already know them when I describe their daily habitual behaviours that you witness in the gym. Those people that feel the need to film themselves every workout and post the awe-inspiring results on any social media platform, yes, I am being sarcastic there, are demonstrating a need for confirmation and significance that they're not getting from their real lives. The significance that comes through living your purpose has been replaced by the fake world confirmatory bias that they receive on whatever social media platform they are using. Why would you need to show anyone else every training session or exercise you do in the gym? And don't give me the "so my coach can assess my technique and form" bullshit. Most of these coaches wouldn't know good form if it slapped them across the face. And unless they're top level pros themselves, then ask yourself, why not? What have they won? How long have they been training? What results are they achieving with their clients without using drugs? Has it ever crossed your mind that the coach that you pay your good money to each month is simply regurgitating the very same information and plans that they have been sent by their own coaches? Yes, I'll guarantee that most of your coaches have coaches themselves. And if they do, then watch out, because you're not getting a program individually suited for you, but a program that's been set up by someone else who likely hasn't achieved jack squat themselves. So there's a few issues raised here. The quality level of coaches today, which I'll leave for a future episode, as although it does highlight a mental disorder, it's not one serious enough to make the top ones looked at today. What I'm more concerned with is the deep hole of the lack of significance and the poor self-esteem these people are truly feeling within themselves. And this is where it becomes something to point fingers at and laugh about, and where true compassion and empathy is needed. And despite the air of confidence and self-importance these same people may assume when they're at the gym, as they set up their tripods with which to film themselves, actually in reality their self-esteem is dangerously low. And I can tell you, it's so low that one sentence of truth to these people would be enough to set off a breakdown that could reach disastrous proportions. That's why whenever I see it, yes, I see it every single day at the gym, I say nothing. That's where my old school training of not speaking during a workout comes in very handy. But I do try and offer advice on the occasion where I see bad form being used. And then, as most often, it's ignored with an almost, "How could you insinuate I'm not doing this correctly?" I leave them alone. I perhaps offer to train with them one day if they would like it. And if that too, as is most likely, is ignored, then what can you do? These people have built themselves a very delicate make-believe bubble world in which they star as the potential great athlete, and social media is very good at confirming to them that same make-believe world is actually a reality, and hence continues the lie. But life always has a way of catching you out on lies. Remember when I said, do not tell lies, be honest, tell the truth? Well, sooner or later, someone or some experience will occur that destroys your delicate bubble world into the shreds of plastic fantasy that it always was. And this point can be a critical moment of crisis for the person leading to self-harm, depression, possible suicide attempts, and long-term feelings of feeling lost in a world that they no longer recognize. Everything that they had believed in has been shown to be a lie. And if they have lived that life and been that person of significance for years, then the damage can be extremely hard to repair. Now, social media has much to blame for these self-delusional beliefs of significance. Well, that's not strictly correct, as significance has always been a human need that we enjoy, but it's also an emotion that should never direct our course of action nor affect our behaviours. For so long as we are living the life that we were meant to live, then people will notice whether you are looking for it or not. It's better to follow your own path, one that you respond to at the deepest level of your heart, than to seek fulfillment through other people's opinions of you. As Marcus Aurelius said, love the humble art you have learned and take rest in it. Pass through the remainder of your days as one who wholeheartedly entrusts all your possessions to the gods, making yourself neither a tyrant nor a slave to any person. And when reflecting on others' opinions of you, remember the Stoic quote, when you are distressed by an external thing, it's not the thing itself that troubles you, but only your judgment of it, and you can wipe this out at a moment's notice. For you see, learning, reading, and becoming more from the lessons of others is a far greater and better path through life than chasing emotional gratification and confirmation from others. For if you seek the highest values in yourself, then what can anyone else's opinion do to you? Nothing. It also saves you from even being these deals with the devil, where you begin to eat for some constructed and imaginary ideal. And yet young people aren't taught the value of great philosophy or of great thinkers. Instead, we're taught to value things or emotions or desires that ultimately will never fulfill you nor satisfy your true reason for existence. Now, the same need for significance and confirmation can be seen by those people in the gym who pose ceaselessly every day they are in, between every set. It becomes almost a compulsive disorder where they simply cannot recover between sets, but they must see themselves in the mirror and also ensure that everyone else knows that they are posing in the mirror too. Again, a perfect example of insecurity and low self-worth and self-esteem. For why else would they feel the need to continually do such a thing? Yes, I accept that for competing athletes, some may find it helpful to see their physiques with a pump and also practice the contracting of the muscles in between sets. But I never ever saw Dorian pose in between sets, nor after his workouts, unless it was for his weekly photo sessions as an Olympia approached. His posing practice was done at home, away from the prying eyes, and he would practice time and time again for hours, but without anyone to see except maybe Debbie. He felt no need to show anyone else his physique. He knew it only mattered for one day, and that other gym members gushing affirmations and confirmations of how great his physique was would mean nothing to those judges at the Olympia. What would they have given him except a self-glorifying and a self-importance that he didn't need? He was not a man who needed the confirmation of others. He had confidence. He had self-assurance and self-esteem. He lacked nothing, and all he focused on was executing his plan. So if Mr. Olympia can do it, and in fact, he went the opposite way. He didn't even allow people to watch him train, let alone pose. It tells you everything you need to know about these other people. No, they're not posing for their own benefit. They're posing for you to see them and hope that you're going to be awed into giving them some type of confirmation to make up for their lack of self-belief. I've seen it become almost disturbingly uncomfortable viewing when I've seen one man stripped down to his underwear in the middle of the gym every single time he's in the gym to go through his posing, whether off-season or in prep matters not. There he is with an extra mirror added so he can see his back. Now why can't he do that at home in the privacy of his house and keep under wraps the physique he hopes to display for the next show? Well, he could, of course, but he needs the filling of a huge hole of self-esteem and lack of confidence that he feels he can only get through physical affirmations of his body. Unhealthy? You bet. A mental health disorder of real seriousness. I've seen these people more in the last 5 years than at any other point in my entire 40-year career. Is it just that I'm noticing it more, or is it that it's more frequent now? It's definitely more frequent now, as more and more people have been drawn towards the sport with existing issues of self-esteem and lack of self-worth around others, and have found a place where people will rarely tell the truth of their behaviour nor of their physiques. How often have you seen someone posing and one of their friends say, "Oh, you're looking great," or "You're nearly there now, huge improvements from last year"? They're lying. Very few people today have the courage to tell the truth. I remember going to see both Dorian and Kerry Kays on the same day, some 4 weeks out from the 1994 British finals. And although I felt I was almost ready with just water to drop, and everyone at my gym had told me I was shredded, ready, nothing left could come off, both Dorian and Kerry said exactly the same thing. 6 more pounds, Paul. I remember thinking, 6 more pounds? Where from? My body was shredded that I could see, but what I couldn't see was the thin layer of fat around my upper back and lower back. That was obviously my genetic last point from which body fat would come from. Yes, they were right, and they were the only 2 people who told me the truth. Now, what would you think I would rather have? What would I rather have from them that day? Yes, you're ready, Paul, only to turn up at the British finals with 6 pounds of extra fat still to come off my body, or to be told the truth and then get ready for the big day and get on stage shredded? You see, you're not being nice when you tell someone a so-called white lie to make them feel better, or what you think they want to hear. You're actually harming their chance for success. The industry has become one of lies, veils of lies, confirmation seekers and givers, and in fact, people are making money out of telling lies and mistruths. Not that is anything new in bodybuilding. We all remember those Weeder ads or those Muscle Tech ads promising the world and pro-like gains only to be disappointed when we made no gains at all and were only left with an empty pocket. So it hasn't just started now, but it has for sure become massively worse. And as a result, thousands of people's mental health has been put on the line in order to line other people's pocket. Let's take just one more example before we leave the rest of the issues until maybe next week's episode. But this one is also a key one. And whoever is involved in allowing this to happen should think twice about their behavior and what they are allowing to happen. Yes, if you're allowing something to happen, then you have to take responsibility. Some responsibility for the results and the damage if it is causing damage. Bodybuilding shows have become a joke today. Now that's a broad statement and not true of all shows, but the vast majority of them are, and I'm calling out all promoters and athletes out there to see what you're doing to both yourselves and to others in the desperate need for significance and perceived success. What do I mean by perceived success? Well, you either win a show or you come second, don't you? Well, not if there is only one person in the class, and not if you enter 2, 3 or more different classes to try and gain as much plastic trophies as possible in your quest for significance. Now, firstly, it appears to me that there are an ever increasing number of categories in shows these days. Are there that many different ways to bodybuild? No, I don't think so. But if you have a class for every conceivable type of physique, then of course the number of contestants will increase, won't they? Well, not always. You see, sometimes someone will enter, say, a first-timers class, the novice class, the open class, the masters class, if they're old enough, all in the quest for as many of these beautiful plastic trophies as possible. For seriously, why else would you enter more than one class? Now, I've heard of people coming third in the novice class only to then win the open class because no one else entered the open class. Now, I'm not sure what sense of achievement that would actually bring to that person, but I'm sure as heck know that it would give me no fulfillment of success at all. In fact, you know the truth exactly of what you're doing and at what level you truly are. And so we now have the situation where the promoters are selling lies to people who want to buy lies to leave with a bag full of trophies which mean nothing to them at their core. They know the truth of their success or have accomplished. Your physique tells it all. One photograph tells it all. Your physique looked like that. And if you've put yourself up against a true battlefield of likewise competitors, then your true rewards will be earned and not bought through the entrance fees of half a dozen different classes. Again, this is a symptom, not the disease itself, a symptom of the lack of self-esteem and an almost desperate desire for acknowledgement and significance that these people obviously are not getting in their lives outside of the bodybuilding stage. Really, look, what do you want to be remembered for? A dozen plastic trophies? And to say that 100 people on social media said that you were inspiring and a winner, only to die, as we almost do, and leave that as your legacy for your time on earth? Or to compete for fun, or simply just train for the love of training and do something truly great with your life that will be remembered for eternity. It's your choice, friends. It's your life, and people can live it as they please. But when I'm seeing lives being destroyed and true life purposes being thrown away for simple emotional needs of significance, then I have to say something and stand up for truth and the honour that can only be found in living your purpose. Now, please do not misunderstand me. Although I have pointed out several behaviours that you yourself may do daily, that isn't to suggest that everyone who does them suffers from a mental health illness or a behavioural gap that they are filling with one of these. However, if you are doing one or several of them, then I would take a step back and I would think about what is driving you in the gym, in your training, and possibly your competitions. And if the answer is anything but because I just love training, then I would suggest that yes, you do need to re-evaluate your life, its direction and its focus, and perhaps ask yourself, is there something that I was truly gifted with that I know I should be using in my life, but because of fear of failure, of fear of success, or other people's perceived opinions, or of cowardice, yes, a strong word, but let's be honest here, we all have times in our lives where we have to dig deep down and confront the dragons that possess our deepest, darkest souls, our shadow self in a Jungian sense. Be brave, be courageous, be honest, be virtuous, have integrity and honour, and rise above the worries of things that have never happened yet, and have faith in something. Maybe your God, maybe a universal power, maybe just in yourself, supported by the thoughts and words of great men and women who came before you. And I'm not saying to stop competing, nor eating the way you choose, but make sure it is the way you choose and not the choice of the scared, fearful, perhaps ill you. Who knows? You need to seek some help. For if you do so, help will come. Believe me. I know, because I've been there. And the freedom, truth and honesty it gives you will make you free for your life. Now, I will cover some more issues regarding mental health linked to bodybuilding and the fitness industry in another episode shortly. But I think that overall, it's simply a reflection of the changes in our society and the difficulties people have had in adapting to those changes, whether they be new technologies that suddenly allowed us to connect to and be both audience and performer to literally anyone in the world who owned a phone and with access to the internet, allowing marketing departments into our very homes meant that no longer could the athlete rely on contracts from magazines and supplement companies to allow them to pursue their sports full time. But now companies have realized that there are very, very few athletes in the world that have enough influence over the targeted audience to pay them money, salaries, like they used to. Today, instead, the magazines have gone, so there's no more contracts there. And the supplement companies have realized that anyone with a large enough list of followers and who loves the sport that much will most likely promote their products in exchange for as little as a percentage of them if they buy them themselves, and offer them the chance to make more money by offering associate schemes whereby if somebody purchases one of their products using a unique code linked solely to the athlete, then they'll likely accept that deal. So desperate are they to be seen as sponsored athletes or brand ambassadors, which in most cases means absolutely nothing. Supplement companies have always been more concerned with their bottom line and they're always linked to their business than the athlete. But the difference is there are now more ways in which to get their products promoted for far less outlay, and taking advantage of people's desperate need for significance so that they can call themselves sponsored or ambassadors in their profiles. Now, is this a mental health illness or simply naivety? Well, I would suggest it's mostly simple naivety, but it's linked strongly to an individual's lack of self-worth again and need for significance, which, if it continues for long enough, may well develop into a serious mental health disorder, because life is a hard teacher, and she will come down the line and drop the veil of likes and followers, actually meaning people genuinely liking you, your personality and your character. And once that goes, you're left feeling lost, alone, empty, and exposed to what will then feel a very cruel world. Instead, we must begin educating young men and young women about the realities of social media. The trouble is, it's really been around for so little a time in terms of research, data, and psychological evaluation and study, that we often simply don't know what impact it was ever going to have on people. But I do think we're beginning to get to the stage now where we're starting to understand the trappings of such technologies. And we're also becoming more aware of how our industry is allowing serious mental health issues to be disguised as normal behaviours in our industry, such as the extreme dieting and the unhealthy focus on the body perfections of how young men and women should look like, in hiding healthy, natural physiques behind drug-assisted, technologically enhanced photos and images and lifestyles which are beyond the reach of nearly everybody out there. It's like showing contest day photos of bodybuilders and getting people to believe that they look like that all year, like the magazines used to. The difference is there are millions more people now getting involved in the industry, not understanding that to build a physique worthy of those seen, it takes years, if not decades, of hard graft and work and effort to really be one of admiration. Instead, we produce classes where people can literally get up on stage with just 3 or 6 months of training and win pro cards, giving them the lie that they have a physique truly worthy of admiration. Now, I've no desire to knock anyone who gets on the stage, but when I see photos of people who are winning classes, who have physiques of the average man or woman, then the industry must take a good look at itself and ask if the desire for money is worth the lie that they are selling these people. So let me finish this week by asking the federations for a little more honesty and honour and integrity, asking people to ask themselves some harsh reality questions of themselves, and just ask themselves if they have truly put in the work to have become a world-class athlete. Because in any other sport, there's no way somebody with as little as 3 months or less training would ever win a state competition, or let alone a national one. This sport used to be a brotherhood, a sisterhood, camaraderie, honesty, because the iron never lies. And people lifted weights because they loved lifting weights and wishing to change their physiques. Now we have people who lift weights to enter competitions, not competitions for those people who lift weights. Can you see the difference? I guess that's where old school versus new school clashes. But there are some relevant issues here that have more importance than mere preference of the size of muscularity on a physique, which is the normal argument that we hear between old school and new school. We have to now question the very nature of what is this thing that we have created, and are we beginning to do more harm to some people than good? Whether you're big or small, muscular or not, we've always known that self-esteem can never be found solely in building your physique. It can help by building the principles that come with building a physique, like hard work, like dedication, like passion and perseverance, goal setting, etc. But the physique itself will never give you self-esteem, and if it does, when it comes to life and aging and you lose that physique, then you're going to have a big fall from your lofty place of self-significance when these younger men and younger women around begin to make you look small and insignificant. Let's teach instead how to build self-esteem properly through education, philosophy, great books and great life lessons, and go back to bodybuilding as the pure form of exercise that it was always meant to be. There's more on this another week, but for now, let me leave you with this, another Stoic quote. For how else can I teach without the words of greater men and women than myself? Characteristics of the rational soul: self-perception, self-examination, and the power to make of itself whatever it wants. It reaps its own harvest. It reaches its intended goal, no matter where the limit of its life is set. No matter which task you pick, it has fulfilled its mission, done its work completely, so that it can say, I have what I came for. Marcus Aurelius. And lastly, this one for me sums up the weakness of the modern world and how easily we have allowed things to become won so easily. No man or woman is more unhappy than he or she who never faces adversity, for it is not permitted to prove himself or herself. So let us build both our muscles and our minds. Think today and tomorrow about why it is you truly lift. And when your answer is a noble one, then you know you're heading in the right direction. If, however, you are more concerned with other factors other than your own self-development, then take some time to reevaluate your relationship with the gym and come back stronger, wiser, and refreshed with a new sense of purpose and intensity for you. For you know what you're searching for. You're seeking each and every workout, every set. You're seeking those elusive 3 more reps. Thank you. Thank you for watching and listening. I'll see you again next week. Take care.